Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Autism Our Story podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with Sara Intonato. She's the mother of Rocco, who is a non-speaking autistic young man who communicates through pointing to letters on a letterboard. You may know Rocco from their 22-minute documentary called Rocco Up. Sara is also an autism parent coach in a support group that I'm honored to be a part of. It is called Autism Changemakers. She's also the author of the book, Emotional Healing for Autism Parents, The Journey You Never Expected to Take. Today, we're going to be talking all about Rocco's autism journey and about all of the amazing things that Sara has been doing in the autism community. Sara, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to chat with you. I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, and we're going to start from there.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. I'm so honored to be here. And I always laugh to myself because when Rocco was first diagnosed, people told me, you should write a book or, you should be someone who helps other parents with autism. And I thought, I can't do that. I'm just trying to breathe and figure this out. And so it's every time I'm with an amazing person like you talking about this, I laugh to myself and think, the joke was on me. Here I am. And so happy to be here.
Yes, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad that you're finally, catching up to what they said. The joke was on you. Here you are. You're doing amazing things, helping autism parents.
Yeah.
You're providing for others what you didn't have back then. And I feel like that's amazing. And I'm so thankful myself.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to help other parents and to see them thrive truly is the most exciting thing. Like, we can do this. We're doing this together. We all deserve to thrive. And when I see people like you logging their wins, doing their self-care, I'm the loudest cheerleader on the sidelines for all of you. So it makes me so happy to be here doing this with you, especially. So I am Sara Intonato. I am a coach and consultant for parents of children with autism, and I specialize in supporting parents of non-speakers in particular, of which I am as well, the parent of a non-speaker, a 15-year-old named Rocco. And I use the word non-speaker, but he does have some verbal ability. He's not conversational. I have many clients who always feel like they don't fit under a label. Their child is semi-verbal or verbal, but not productively so, or not conversational. And so they always wonder, does the term non-speaking apply to me? So I specialize for those people. If your child is not able to converse, is not able to voice their needs, desires, opinions on a regular basis, those are my people. I also love when parents come to any of my coaching options telling me that they're really struggling with something, whether it be their own stress or their child's behaviors, or they want to get their child to spell with a letterboard, but they don't feel confident that they can do it. This, to me, is the most exciting thing because I love to meet people where they are and just get started, because the path will be messy, most likely, for anyone. But if you just start, you'll be so thankful in a few years that you started even amidst the mess. So I do that both one-on-one and in a group that I run called Autism Changemakers, which supports parents all over the world, and it's phenomenal. And it's really something that I never expected to do. I have a background in yoga, the ancient science of yoga. I've studied in India 11 times, and I thought that being a yoga teacher and a spiritual practitioner was going to be my only vocation. I felt deeply called to it. I was enormously successful at it. I didn't think about doing anything else. And then the universe gave me a hard left turn and said, well, now you have this special child. And I didn't think I was doing anything great by simply getting on my mat and doing my yoga practice every day. It was simply the only thing I knew how to do to help myself to function, to be able to handle the enormous amount of stress, to help my child, to be strong enough to advocate for him. And it wasn't until he was probably 10, when we were filming our documentary called Rocco Up, which has won awards and been in film festivals, that I picked my head up and started looking around at other parents like me. And I thought, oh, they are not thriving. Why do I feel like I'm thriving and they're not? Because I'm not a unicorn. We're all here. We all have 24 hours in a day. What's happening? And I was really shocked to realize that the simple act of helping myself every day was the special sauce that really allowed me to be a better parent, because it's contrary to everything you're told by the experts when your child is diagnosed and you're given a to-do list of a million things that only gets longer about how to help them. Nobody tells you to go help yourself. And yet I couldn't deny what I was seeing. And the more I started encouraging people to help themselves, the greater difference I saw in their lives and their children's lives. So push came to shove. I wrote my book during COVID, and it took a long time to write because, COVID parenting. And I ended up just starting to coach one person here and there who I was introduced to. And then it slowly grew. I slowly started my podcast. I slowly let go of my yoga business entirely. And the joke was also on me there because, of course, I use the tools of the ancient science of yoga to help my clients calm and steady their nervous systems every single day, just like I do for myself. So it was a beautiful way of these worlds colliding that I thought were always going to be really separate. So now my full-time gig is parent, as you know, to two beautiful children. My younger child, my daughter, is typically developing and fully verbal. And Rocco is non-speaking, fluent on a letterboard, 15, attends regular high school and in a special ed program. I'm always advocating for that still. So I'm very much living the life of your listeners, the parent who advocates, who works on the diet for their children's health, who goes to the doctor's appointments, who makes an effort to help them socialize. And that's one of the reasons why I feel I have credibility with this audience, because they know I'm in the trenches with them. I'm just not some expert who tells them what to do and then hangs up my coat at the end of the day and goes back to my, quote, normal life. That's not me. So I love that I get to play both sides of this. The parent who's in the trenches with you, I understand you, I get it. And the parent who can help you during some of your darkest moments, the professional who has the skills to do that. So that's me in a nutshell. I still practice yoga daily. I prioritize getting outside almost every day if I can, even to just walk around the block and clear my brain. So I practice what I preach, for sure. And that's very important to me.
That's amazing. I'm thankful for all the things that you're doing and how your whole journey brought you to this place where you can, like you said, you're using all the things that you thought might have been separate. You're using all of that now to support others like you. And I love that you also have that experience. You're living it. And it as a person that, works with you and you're helping me, it feels I can relate. I love to be able to relate to you and not to feel like I'm just coming to somebody who probably doesn't really understand what I'm going through. It's good to know that because you have that experience, your son is now a teenager. And so you've been where I am. I'm still at 7 years old, but it feels good to have a coach or a person, a support that knows what I'm going through. And it's just been so helpful for me. And I'm so thankful.
Thank you.
So I know that you are certified in RPM. So I wanted you to share a little bit about how did you find out about RPM, and when did you start spelling with Rocco?
I love this question. I'm now a level 2 RPM provider, going for level 3 really soon. And I started with Rocco 3.5 years ago. He was 12 years old at the time, just 12. And believe it or not, I'd heard about RPM many years before. Rocco was probably 7 when I heard about it. A doctor who we work with, who I love and trust, who works with the autistic population, recommended it to me because I always believed that Rocco was in there. I always believed he was smart. I had evidence of just being with him on a daily basis that to me was irrefutable. But Of course, if you're in a typical school environment, that's not the feedback you get about your child's abilities most of the time when they're non-speaking. So I would listen to these reports that would tell me he had a super low IQ, would never do certain things in his life, and they just never felt accurate. And this wasn't my ego mind saying, that's not my kid. That was my gut, my mother's intuition saying, smile and nod, Sarah, but take this with a grain of salt because this is not who your child is. And so I just never felt satisfied with the options that I was presented for communication by typical environments, the systems that are usually in place. And that's not to say that they're bad or they don't work for some people. And Rocco is a great example of someone who did benefit from an AAC device. He still uses one. And it does benefit him, but it didn't provide him with the easy access to sharing his personality. And I always believed he was capable of doing that. I just didn't know how to get it out. So when he was about 7, this doctor suggested RPM to me. There wasn't a lot on the internet at the time. I had a hard time finding a provider, information, and I didn't stop looking though. And maybe a year later, someone in the community said, hey, Soma is going to be in our neighborhood doing a workshop. She doesn't have any openings available, but you could go watch and see what you think about this. So I did. And I watched an adult sit with her who she had met before, who to the naked eye, I will say, had very high support needs. He, was an adult, but came with his parents. He didn't drive himself, didn't really have much verbal ability, repeated a few words over and over, didn't look like he was highly interested in the world around him. I know that's something that people often say about non-speaking individuals who have motor planning issues. They seem like they're in their own world. So he appeared this way, sat at the table, was an open communicator, and started spelling with Soma about Elon Musk and the stock market and how he wanted to change some of his investments based on what he read in the news that week. And I just sat there stunned, hopeful, and quite honestly, sort of slapping myself on the wrist for thinking, Sarah, you passed judgment about how this man looked to the naked eye. You had no idea what was inside. And the same happens to your son every day. So go and figure this out. So I actually looked for a provider for a few more years, and I couldn't find one near me who had any type of availability, but I didn't stop looking. And then finally, COVID happened. On the other side of that, I sort of threw my hands up and said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to stop waiting for someone else to give it to me, and I'm just going to do it myself. And so I did the level 1 training at that time, 3.5 years ago. And I just started with Rocco right away. Every day in our house, didn't matter if he was in the mood, didn't matter if I was in the mood, it didn't matter if it was really messy, it didn't matter if it was one letter at a time. We just started the process of doing a lesson every day, making it happen every day. And he was an amazing student. He was not fast to open communication though, which I know we'll talk more about later, but he was fast to learn and he was fast to spell academically. And you could tell that something in him, though it was challenging for him to do and to motor plan and to learn that way, something in him really was committed to doing it with me. He knew that this was an avenue for him to share himself with the world. And I really believe that is what helped him to keep going on the days that felt difficult. But that is how we started. So he's only been spelling for about 3.5 years, and he's been fluent, open for less than a year now. And I also want to say that people tend to look at a speller as open, like can fluently communicate or not. And there's a huge gap that people too often gloss over, which is the pre-communication stage. Rocco spent a lot of time there, which is when someone asks you an open-ended question and you might give a 1-word answer or a 2-word answer. And this for him was a very important phase to get his confidence up and to not worry about getting the answer right. Because coming from an ABA background, there's so much emphasis on getting the answer right. Like, you get it right, you get a reward, right? So kids will often panic because they've never really had to answer open-ended communication questions before. If they haven't had a reliable mode of communication, most of them haven't. So when you ask them something like, hey, how did your swim class make you feel today? They would very often freeze up because they think, what am I supposed to say? What's the right answer? And so Rocco could spell really lengthy words in an academic lesson. Cleopatra, octopus, tentacles, no problem. But if I said, hey, how was your sleep last night? I would get nothing. So I got through that phase with giving choices. How did it feel? Restful, not restful. And he would always make a choice and a word to describe how he felt. But we spent a long time getting over the anxiety that he had around his answers being correct, regardless of what they were.
Yeah.
You can't get your feelings wrong, you know? And it took him a while to get over his shyness about that, but he did. So for people who are in that murky middle phase, it has a name. It's called the pre-communication stage. It's very important. Don't worry if your student is spending a good amount of time there, because it's helping them to get the confidence they need to become a fluent communicator. And, you know, I think that was essential for him and for us. We didn't let ourselves get discouraged that he wasn't the overnight fluent communicator. It took him, you know, 2.5, almost 3 years to get there, but we got there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you brought that up because, yeah, a lot of parents, like what you said, we always just think, you know, not open, but there's that middle part. That's progress that's happening there, and it's important. And yeah, I feel like it's encouraging to hear that so that you don't feel like, oh, we're not open yet, but there's still what's going on there. It's valuable. It's important. It's good to realize that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful.
Wow.
So since we're talking about, you know, the spelling and finding out, you know, starting to presume competence, I wanted us to talk about that mindset shift that happens with parents or a caregiver when they start spelling or presuming competence with their non-speaker. That's something that I'm hoping that a lot of parents or anybody that's working with a non-speaker that maybe are not yet spelling would understand. So can you please share that? Because it's something that's really hard for people to get because we've been told to think a certain way for a long time. And so, yeah.
I actually spoke with a family recently whose son is in his 20s, and they're just exploring spelling now, which I think is fantastic. You know, it's never too late. But I'm seeing the mental leap that they have to make is so much bigger than the family of a 5-year-old, because for the last 20-something years, they've been told by people in authority positions for, you know, school settings, doctor settings, you name it, that their son can't do it, isn't in there, etc. So they're making a big leap of faith. And I really honor the discomfort that they have of leaving behind 20 years of conditioning, essentially. And
Yes.
I think it's so beautiful that they're willing to still try, because I think many families have their hopes dashed when they, you know, go searching for solutions for their child, no matter how old their child is, and they don't work. Or, you know, some things take a long time when for the other family it happened quickly, and it can be really frustrating. So that mindset piece of being willing to take a risk and also let it be messy, I think is very important. Presuming competence does not mean the student is going to take to it easily or fast, but it means they have the capacity to learn it. I always say that my child can learn anything if I'm willing to throw my timeline out the window. And Rocco has proven that to be true. But if I'm coming at him with time pressure or feeling like, oh, if it doesn't happen by next week, it's never going to happen. That's not helpful. He can feel that in my energetic vibration. So presuming competence also goes hand in hand with, yes, believing that the student can learn, and also reminding yourself that what they need to learn might be different than what you expect, including timing, energy expenditure, methodology. Put that out the window and let the student show you. As you start working on something, they're going to provide the feedback that you need to know how to adapt. But if you never start it because you're afraid of doing it wrong, you're never going to get that valuable feedback. So presuming competence allows the parent or the provider to be curious around, what does this student actually need to be successful, to learn this? How do I need to change what I'm doing to help meet them where they are and get this beautiful energetic dance going so that we can go back and forth and enjoy this experience together? And it's huge, I think, to look at presuming competence with those things in mind, because I think people, of course, see students who are fluent spellers and feel pressure to get there with their own child. Understandably so. If you've been working hard to give your child a voice in whatever way for a long time, it's only natural that you don't want to be patient for that much longer. You're ready. You're ready to hear them, but they're going to go at the pace that's right for them. So presume competence, know they can do it, know they are capable, and know that it will unfold in divine timing. And I think that's a really potent reminder. But presuming competence, to me, also goes into the realm of family support. One of the things that I started doing when Rocco and I were spelling together was making an effort, at least in the beginning, to do it when no one else was around. Because I know that everyone else would have their preconceived notions around what he was able to do, or what the teachers in school said he could do, or what so-and-so said he couldn't do. And I didn't want anyone's energy intermingling with his. I just wanted this experience to be led by him. And so as he got more confident, it became easier for both of us to kind of tune out whatever else was happening around us. But that emotional expectancy piece, to me, goes right in alignment with presuming competence. The emotional expectancy piece is that the participant who's doing the spelling is going to feel the energy and the thoughts of everyone in the room with them. And even if you have well-intended grandma and grandpa over and they want to watch, but they've been told for years that their grandchild can't do that, it might interfere with the output. So just know that you'll have to look at those things together, because you might presume competence, but other people in your life might need more time to get there. So let them get there. Just keep leading the way. And when in doubt, just go all in with yourself and your child or your student. If you two know that you're both ready, you're both there to make it happen however long it takes. But when you make that shift to presuming competence, it's like watching impossible things become possible.
Well,
And as you start and you see that magic happening, it really gets exciting, because then you start to think, well, I didn't know my child could ever spell a word. What else is possible? Maybe I could take them to the basketball game at Madison Square Garden. I've never done that. Maybe that's possible. And maybe that's something we could do as well. And it really opens up your mind to anything and everything you desire for your child and your family to experience being possible. Presuming competence is not just about academics or spelling. You can presume competence socially or with dynamics in your home. And that's essential as well. And I often tell school staff, I presume competence with you too. I presume you're capable of learning how to do this. I presume that you can handle it. I presume that you are smart enough and that you can figure this out. And I flip it on the adults in our lives too. And I love doing that, because it makes them go, I never thought of it that way, but it's powerful.
I love that. I feel like it helps. It just gives the person, sometimes we're our own limit. We limit ourselves. It just helps like open that up a little bit and be like, wow, that person believes in me. Then why shouldn't I? Like I think it gives the person more self-esteem. I love that with just doing it with just adults and you know
I also think that's a key piece of advocacy that people don't look at. I meet a lot of parents who are very angry, understandably, with schools or with other professionals in their lives. And they're so angry that it almost shuts down their ability to advocate. Like, school's not doing this and school's not doing that. School can't do this. School can't do that. And it's like, you're presuming competence with your non-speaking child, but you're not presuming competence with their teachers or the professionals. So if you're already shutting it down before you've even tried, then where do you think you're going to go? But if you can presume competence in all of these settings and let them know that you're doing that, it flips the script and it allows them to rise to the occasion and to get more creative about what they're going to do as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, yeah, I wanted us to touch on this because it's just really there's parents that I have people messaging me that have never heard of spelling, and so they have no idea about the presuming competence part of it, and it's hard for them to understand. Some are asking, "Well, my son doesn't even know the ABCs. My son doesn't know how to spell. How's that? How am I going to do it?" And so I feel like it's so important for people to talk more and more about presuming competence and just like that mindset shift, like that paradigm shift that goes on when you're learning about all these things, because it helps you be set up to be in a position where you can start it the right way. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually asked Soma Mukhopadhyay, the founder of RPM, that question when I interviewed her years ago. And I said, if you have someone who's 15, never spelled before, parents may not even know if they know the alphabets, no one's really sure what they have inside. How would you tell them to start? And her answer was so beautiful. She said, first of all, start in an age appropriate way. That doesn't mean the student has to spell fluently, but let's say you have a 15-year-old who loves to watch Shark Week TV shows. So start talking to them about sharks and then ask them about one letter at a time. Does shark start with S or W, right? Like, build it really slow to just see what they know, but do it in a way that presumes they have an age appropriate understanding of what's happening around them at the very least. What's the worst that happens? They learn something, they have fun with you,
yeah.
right? So simple.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, this is really a message that I'm hoping gets to a lot of the autism parents, especially the ones that have older kids. It just I feel for them when I see parents that have older kids and they're not yet there. They don't have that understanding, and I'm always praying for them to get this and understand it. And like
Yeah.
that's why I feel like people need to talk about it more and more, because some people need to hear it more times for it to really be like, okay, wow, my 20-year-old is actually in there as a 20-year-old. So maybe I should talk to him as a 20-year-old. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing it and just explaining it in a way that is understandable
And I
for
will
people.
also add very quickly that there's an amazing video on the Soma RPM's Instagram page. I think it's from September 2024, where she interviews 3 moms who I believe are in their 80s when she interviews them. And they talk about how they started spelling with their sons when their sons were 40 and
Wow.
living in a group home. And now their sons are 55 years old and they
And
have
so,
a voice because these parents decided to try. Instead of saying, oh, it's too late, my kid's too old, they live in a group home, because I'm older now, there's no sense in trying. They just said, we're going to try. And now their sons have a voice and they're able to talk to them about really important topics. And to me, that is just one of the most inspirational things I've ever seen. Like, look at these women who just decided it was not too late. They were not willing to give up and they were going to explore it and be curious. And I think it's just so beautiful that testament to possibility when you're willing to put your ego aside and just see what happens.
Yeah, that is so beautiful and inspirational. Oh my goodness. Wow. I would love to see that video.
I'll send it
That
to you.
is amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So, since we're still talking about presuming competence, I wanted you to talk about the importance of presuming competence. What are some things that you saw, some changes you saw in Rocco when you began to presume competence with him?
This is great because it highlights how he was not an open speller yet. And even before that happened, I noticed he had an easier time remaining regulated throughout the day, at school, at home. You know, when he was much younger, and he still is a sensory seeker, but he was, you know, every drawer in the kitchen would be open. He would be ripping up paper towels and he would be chewing on things, and he would seek that fulfillment a lot. And so I knew we had made a lot of progress when school sent home a bunch of his OT chewies that he would chew on for oral input because he wasn't using them. And like, this is a kid who like would go to school with a chewy in his mouth, you know, and have one the whole day. And after a while, they were sort of like, nah, he doesn't seem to really need to work as hard to regulate himself anymore. And I thought, that's interesting. And little things like that, you know, I would see the sensory seeking come out in more acute situations, like if he'd had a really bad night's sleep because he had a cold. And then the next day he would be tired and he would be under the weather and his nose would be stuffy. I would see it come out on days like that. But on a regular day, significantly less. And he also had a noticeably lower anxiety level. Rocco didn't really have anxiety at all until, you know, the early puberty stages. And then he started to get much more nervous in certain types of settings. Knowing what I know now about RPM, he's a very sensitive visual processor. So you can take him to the loudest, most noisy party in the world, he's fine. If you take him into New York City and there's huge skyscrapers in front of him, he almost cowers, like needs to adjust before he goes out of the car. It's really interesting. But I noticed that his anxiety in general with adapting to situations was significantly lower. And if he had a moment of anxiety, he could breathe and get through it much faster. And I think knowing that he had a means of expressing himself, even if it was one word at a time, helped him to relax tremendously. And I think how much of his sensory seeking must have been connected to his nervousness and, you know, feeling that intense pressure from different sensory inputs that were difficult from him in different environments. So that was something I really noticed as well. We managed the puberty stage really well. Rocco started spelling when he was 12. So we were really in it at that time. And like any teenage boy, you're going to have your embarrassing puberty moments, but he was able to adapt really quickly. He was able to, you know, manage himself for the most part, again, unless he was sick or something like that, really well. And so it's not to say we didn't have to work at it, but easier, far easier than I expected it to be based on what I've heard parents talk about in relation to teenage boys at that age. So that was really pleasant for us. And I think him just feeling seen and heard and acknowledged and confident did wonders for the way he felt about himself, truly. And one of the things that he did like to talk about before he was open-ended, but would give you those little glimpses of one or two words in an open fashion, was how he felt when he was spelling. So when we would do a lesson, I would always ask, did you enjoy this? You know, yes or no, or, you know, how did it make you feel? One word. And he always really enjoyed telling me how spelling made him feel and that he felt proud of himself. And I think that just does wonders for a person's well-being. Like you see it in typical kids when they come home and they feel proud of themselves. When an adult gets a compliment, they feel proud of themselves. And I think he's just like that, like anyone else. And it was really powerful to be reminded of that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I've heard from just a lot of the non-speakers that I've, interviewed their parents. They've shared that just from the moment that they started to even just to talk to them age appropriately, it just makes a huge difference. With Kyler, I see it when we're spelling, and he likes to see the progress of what we're spelling. And when I write it down, he stands up, he loves it. And even
Yeah.
though he's not telling me how it makes him feel, I can see that he's so happy and proud of himself that, wow, mom is believing in me. It could be a big word. And he's like, wow, I did that. I feel
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And I will also say I work with a family whose son is Rocco's age, 15, and he just spelled his first open sentence a few weeks ago. And it was after he said, wow, I found my voice. I didn't know if I ever would. His next sentence was, Mom, I need you to believe in me. Because his mom, huge compassion for her, had been told for 15 years, your son can't do it. He's not in there. He's 15. We're still teaching him, numbers 1, 2, and 3 in school, right? Like those types of things, like pre-K work. And so naturally, it was hard for her to make the leap. I think she felt like walking out on a limb with no safety net. There's no guarantee anything's ever going to work. You just have to be willing to try. But she did. And I was so moved that that was one of the things he spelled on his first day spelling in an open fashion. Like, you need to believe in me. And I think, how long has he waited to be able to say that to
Yeah.
his mom? And that's going to shift the whole dynamic of the family for the better. And his younger siblings will talk to him differently now. And it's just beautiful to think that the whole family changes for the better because of this one thing that they're taking on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So, how long after you guys started your spelling journey did Rocco become an open speller?
That was about more than 2.5 years when he spelled his first open sentence. It was almost a year ago. And we had been surfing, and he loves surfing. There's a documentary about him surfing. And I could tell he wasn't feeling great that day, or he wasn't in the mood, and he just wasn't himself. And so we got home, and he wasn't spelling open in an open fashion yet, but I thought, let me just try with him because he clearly needs something. Maybe he'll be motivated to share a little more. And he was able to say, Mom, I have a headache. I didn't enjoy surfing today. I have a headache. Can I go lay in my room? The AC was on, it was dark in there. And I said, sure. And that was his first sentence. And after that, it blew the lid off because I knew he could do it. So I just started adding a few more open-ended questions at the end of every lesson, waiting a little longer in the discomfort if he was taking his time and kind of delaying sharing anything. I would encourage him, like, hey, I know you shared so beautifully about the headache. Maybe just tell me one more thing. And it was like that, like short sentences for a few more months. And then what really allowed me to get to know Rocco much better was totally unexpected. And that was when we joined a virtual music club last October. So like 2 years and 9 months into our spelling journey, I almost didn't sign him up because I knew everyone else there was going to be a fluent open speller. And I thought, he's almost there, but he's not really there yet. What if he can't keep up and it hurts his confidence? And one of the moms of an adult who's 30 said to me, I'm going to tell you to sign him up regardless, because I almost didn't sign up my son because I didn't think he was there yet, but I figured we would just give it a go. And she said, I was shocked to see how motivated my son was to talk to friends instead of just talking to mom all the time. And I thought, I've got a teenager, and I wonder if my teenager would prefer to talk to friends. So we just went anyway. And that was really what was the stick of dynamite for Rocco. He could not wait to listen to a song, and then there would be a discussion question to answer, and everyone would take their time answering it. And the things that came out of him showed me so much about who he is that I always felt was in there, but could never really confirm. I always knew he was a deeply spiritual, sensitive soul, but he would talk about it in relation to these discussion questions. And I started to joke of like, of course, that's my groovy Aquarius child, like me, you know, like sharing spiritual things from the other realm, you know, like it was so amazing. They would ask, you know, this is a love song. Do you think that the moon is an appropriate topic to use when singing about love? And he's like, well, of course, because the moon governs our energy and like all these complex things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm seeing. It was so fun to get to know him in a more complex way. Also, because when you're parenting and you're living a full life, you don't sit down and ask those types of questions to your kid a lot of the time. And so the music club prompted different types of discussions that allowed me to see more of his personality. It allowed me to see how much he was really craving friends. And he loved, still loves, every moment of being with his people. And it opened him up to other things as well, like Christmas card exchange with cards in snail mail with friends. And it was the first time he could really write a Christmas note to someone or a Valentine to his friends. And then we popped them in the mailbox. And seeing the things that were coming from his heart and how grateful he was to have friends and to have a voice and to have a reason to share it was just amazing. And, you know, with music, it can be about any topic. So the questions would always prompt him to share such interesting things about his interests, his fears. You know, sometimes people would even support one another if the other person was going through something. And it just really showed me how wise he is. He's 15, but he's not 15. He has lived lifetimes with that soul of his. And I see that come out now when he is in this type of environment, or even now when I talk to him. And it just reminds me what a gift he is to be around. And it's so phenomenal as a parent to see all those suspicions you had about your child being in there, being smart, being a special human being who has thoughts and feelings confirmed.
Yeah.
Because I think parents are gaslit beyond comprehension in our line of parenting, right? And so the letterboard not only allowed me to get to know Rocco, but it allowed me to acknowledge myself. Like, thank goodness you kept believing in him. You knew he was in there. How many people tried to tell you no, and you just didn't listen? And so it's just been a beautiful unfolding that is still unfolding. And it's really cool to see it happening and to see other people appreciating it too. I think is really special.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm always amazed at what you share whenever you guys do the music group. It's amazing. I remember singing some where see their personality come out. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Yes. So yeah, I was also just curious to see like how did it feel getting to know him for the first time after all those years?
I think my story is a little different than parents who feel like it's an explosion, right? Like all of a sudden your child, however old they are, shares with you. Because I am also the provider, I had been seeing the 1-word answers, the 2-word answers slowly coming. So I knew he was in there and I knew he was capable, but nothing prepares you for that very first, like, Mom, I love you. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for giving me a voice. Like, I get emotional even just thinking about it now. And I think, I don't like to think, where would he be if I hadn't just believed in him? But instead, I flip it and I think, wow, I'm so thankful that I was just undaunted. And I'm so thankful that now this has allowed the two of us to develop such a deep level of trust. He knows that I always have his back. And I think that's huge because our kids are living in a world where they're not often understood and environments were not built for them specifically. So every day they're taking risks to go out and be in the community and do things that are not risks to us. And so it felt for me like an enormous gift to know that he feels safe enough to share this with me. He feels safe enough to be honest with me, because I know families where the child won't share because they're afraid, what if mom and dad have an opinion about what they share, or they don't want to upset mom and dad because they can see they're really stressed out, right? So it was just really beautiful to know that we have this deep trusting connection because we've built this together, and I want nothing more than for him to take it and run with it and share it with everybody. But it just felt like one of those things that happens in your life where you see it, it's real, and it wasn't a shock because we've been working toward it for a long time, but it's still a shock even though it was slow for us. And you go to bed that night, and I just remember laying awake thinking, like, thank God I just kept going. Thank God in the beginning, where it was like watching grass grow and so slow and so tedious, we just kept going, because now this is just the beginning. The world is his oyster, and I can't wait to see what's possible for him now. And for me, the most emotional moments have come in the moments that have surprised me quite a bit. Like, oh, I thought I knew my kid, but I never knew this part. Yeah. And one of those for us has been Rocco's love of dogs. Because when you have motor planning issues, you may not engage with people and animals and your surroundings in a typical way. So we have a service dog, Oakley, who we all love, and he is a tracking dog. So if Rocco gets lost, he can track his scent. So he's a working dog, but he's still a love. And my daughter's the child who will love him and smother him. And, she would have 10 dogs if she would. That's her, right? So Rocco always seemed kind of, he was cool with Oakley, loves him, but wasn't all over him in the way that dog lovers typically are. And so I was really shocked when Rocco started sharing, with discussion questions or things like that, if you won the lottery, what would you do? And he's like, well, of course, I would open a dog rescue and rescue all the dogs because I love dogs so much. And I was like, what? I didn't know. Yeah. And so many times when we've talked about unconditional love, Rocco said, well, Oakley gives me that every day. I get unconditional love, and I'm so thankful. And it makes me so happy to know that I have that in my life as a support. And I was like, wow, because he's not patting him 24/7. He does pat him. But what's really interesting is that as he's shared this, it's allowed me to nurture his relationship with the dog even more. Like say, oh, why don't you throw the ball for him more? He really likes that. Or why don't you give him a treat since he's sitting near you? And now I'm seeing Rocco engage more with him and even other dogs when we're out and about. He's less nervous. His curiosity is higher. And it was just one of those things that is so simple, but so amazing to see. Like, oh gosh, I've lived with this person for 15 years. Yeah. And only in the last few months did I really know how much his dog means to him and how touched he is by animals and in general, and wanting to do more to help them. It's just astounding, really. And I know there's going to continue to be things that I learn about him that I haven't learned yet. And for me, that's just the coolest thing. It makes it so exciting. Spelling never feels tedious to me anymore, because I think, what am I going to learn today about my own child that I know? It's
that's such a blessing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. So, as we all know, you are a autism parent coach, and I wanted you to talk about what advice would you give to parents that are struggling with their autism, with their non-speaker or their child?
I want to start by saying it doesn't matter what the cause of your struggling is, whether it's your child's not sleeping or they're having behaviors or they won't spell for you or whatever it is, school, etc. It doesn't matter what is causing the suffering. Everyone who's listening, I know, has had a moment where they feel burnt out, exhausted, not sure what to do, even if they have the hope that something can help them and they don't know what to do. Everyone has experienced that darkness and that frustration of feeling like, I just don't know how to move through this. So the advice I would give is that moving through it starts with you. And this is not always a convenient answer because there's usually work involved when it starts with you. And that might mean your work is to say no to social engagements or family members and go to bed early. Your work is to drink more water and actually track how much you're drinking to make sure you're hydrated and feeling well, to hand off to dad or grandma and take a walk around the block in silence by yourself or listening to your favorite music, even if it's 10 minutes. But as you change your inner state, it makes everything else you have to face so much easier. And this is just something that you can't outsource. There is no magic pill. It requires you to make yourself and your inner state a priority. Because very often there's the problem that we're tackling in life as parents of non-speakers, or there are several, but the worrying, the rumination, the beating ourselves up, the constantly feeling like we're not good enough, those things are optional and they exacerbate the problem significantly. So if you can manage yourself and remind yourself, I am worthy of feeling well and at least feeling steadier, I'm going to do what it takes to make myself feel steadier. I guarantee whatever you're struggling with will feel a little bit lighter. It may not be completely resolved, but it will feel lighter and like it's manageable to come at it with a solution or test some solutions and figure it out. So this is not always easy for parents who have been trained to be martyrs and put themselves last day after day after day. So it does require you to embrace an identity shift and remind yourself, I am worthy and deserving of feeding myself properly today, of getting some fresh air, of going to bed instead of replying to yet another email. You have to decide you're worthy of that. And there is no worthiness fairy who comes down from the sky with her magic wand and says, poof, you're worthy now, go ahead. No, you have to decide, but it is that simple. It is a decision that you make. And when you make it, everything else becomes easier. And this is something that we explore in my group for parents of non-speakers called Autism Changemakers, of which Nicole is a founding member. And I'm so honored that she's there with us. We don't just say, oh yeah, go do the thing. Go take your walk. Go drink your water today. We also talk about the discomfort that might be there in a mom who has been in a state of hypervigilance for years, saying it feels really scary to rest. What if something goes wrong if I allow myself that 15-minute nap? What if dad can't handle it, right? Like, what if I go down to my kitchen after and the sink is on and spilling onto the floor and my kitchen is flooded? Like, parents like us live in that state of waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. So asking them to take care of themselves can feel really edgy, like a survival mechanism has been tripped. Like, you're asking me to take a nap, you might as well ask me to shoot myself. Like, that's impossible. But it does feel that scary, and we acknowledge that it does feel like that because your nervous system has been trained for something else, and now we're telling it to switch. So we're here for the discomfort. We're here to witness you when you need support. We're here to provide support if you can't find it anywhere else. We're here to get you going with things that you might need to tackle, like looking at your child's health, spelling, your own stress management, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. And that is so crucial to remember. Doing it alone is a choice now.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot harder to take that road. So instead, I invite you to come join us and support yourself. And Nicole will have a link for you and all that. But it's really phenomenal to start embracing your people who understand you, who cheer you on when you get in that 5-minute kettlebell workout with the kids watching a show. Right? And you're so glad that you did it after, even if it was just 5 minutes. Like, you could have done nothing, but you did something. So come and join us, because it will change everything for you.
Yes, and I totally agree. I have seen it. So thankful that, I was able to find you the day that I found you, and I was really stressing. And you remember the first message I sent? I was like, I'm just struggling. And I'm thankful. And now I have sisters, like we become so close, and we help each other, and we check on each other, and we're supporting each other in whatever we're doing. And we all have that, we are seeing that in each other, that change maker in each other, and like helping that come out. And it's been beautiful. And
it is beautiful. And you come from a culture where that phrase, it takes a village, really comes to life. A culture where people help each other. You're living in community. You're not alone and in isolation. And in America, it's very different.
Yeah.
And people do feel alone a lot of the time. We've had people who are your sisters now in the group say, I am my village. I don't have any family nearby. I live in a rural environment. It's me. And now, because we're in this group together, we get to say, it's not just you anymore. We may not be down the street, but we are just a quick message away, and we understand your life. And I think there's so much possibility when people have that community and connection and can role model for each other the things that they need to see. People are seeing you take care of yourself, and they're realizing, oh, she's got 4 boys. One of them is non-speaking. And if she can do this, I can get in my kitchen with my kids, watching a show and work out for 10 minutes and make myself feel good. And so, and vice versa, someone else is homeschooling and spelling and doing an amazing job, and we get to see her and think, oh, wow, like, that's possible for my kid too, if I want that. So those role models are essential, because I remember when my son was Kyler's age, looking for role models, and I wasn't finding any easily. And when I did find them, they were from the spelling community or the biomedical community. They weren't from the traditional communities being offered to me by the powers that be. And I very much felt alone. Like, I've got to go figure this out by myself, which is why Autism Changemakers exist, so that you don't have to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so thankful for it. Yes, I will have a link for anybody that's interested in that, and all the other things I mentioned here, like the documentary and your book, all those things, they'll be in the description to this video. So we've come to the end of our interview here. I always ask this question to parents at the end of the interview. What is something that Rocco has taught you about life?
My favorite question. Rocco has taught me there is always a way. If something is in your heart, if you're having an intuitive hit that something is possible, but you don't know how to do it, or someone else tells you it's impossible, but you feel differently inside, just trust there is always a way, even if the way has not shown itself yet. Don't give up looking. Just trust the way will show itself at the perfect time when you are ready to receive it. And when Rocco was about the age of being diagnosed, maybe 18 months, 2 years old, my brother-in-law, who's a hockey player, shared a quote with me, because it was a quote, I believe it was on a plaque in the Detroit Red Wings locker room. And his coach loved it so much, he put the plaque in his locker room when he was playing hockey as a young man. And the quote is from St. Augustine. And it is, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of faith is to see what you believe.
Wow.
And this has been my mantra for my parenting journey. I have chills saying it now for years now. And I had many moments where I felt hopeless, when I couldn't find a way. And I would read that quote to myself. I would write it down. I would put it on sticky notes, and I would, say it out loud when I was taking a walk or in the bathroom washing my face in the mirror. And I would just say over and over, Sara, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of faith is to see what you believe. And Rocco is a living, breathing testament to that. And it just reminds me to keep going, because whatever I know is possible, I will find a way.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. That is so true. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story, and for all the amazing things that you're doing. I'm so thankful for your support in my autism mom life. When I found you, I was struggling, and I am so thankful for where I am now because I think I started in the beginning of this year, and we've just been, you've been coaching me every here now and then yeah, we're here, and I am just so thankful. And it's amazing to see what you're doing, and starting Autism Change Makers. Everybody that's joining, it's amazing to see, and all the support you're giving to autism parents. It's much appreciated, and I'm so thankful.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being part of such a groundbreaking group of parents saying, we matter and we are done being dismissed. It is time for us to be seen and heard and acknowledged. But in order to do that out in the world, we have to see and hear and acknowledge ourselves. And that's the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for having me. This is such a beautiful pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can get notified whenever I post new content. Until next time.